Hello everybody. Let's give some people time to jump in. It's Brian of London in the Forest. I did not go live yesterday. Let's see if anybody turns up or if I'm persona non grata. Okay, what's going on with Tommy? Confusion. I didn't really mean to sow confusion or undermine Kaylin and George and whoever else is talking for Tommy back in the UK. But yesterday when I woke up and I saw some of the sort of more hysterical InfoWars stuff about move to a 70% Muslim prison and HMP Leicester as well, didn't ring true. So I didn't say anything. I kept my mouth shut until I found out more things later. Firstly, I don't really care which, well, I know which prison he's in. I'm not going to say it. People have figured it out. Good for them. The main thing is that Hull was a Category B prison. There are, I think, 4 categories in English prisons: A, B, C, D. A is the most severe. D is somewhat open. People, so C is middle of the road, but it's for generally non-violent prisoners. Tommy's big problem during his first, it wasn't his first, his long mortgage fraud, which was a fake mortgage fraud case, he was sitting often in Category A prisons, and that was a huge problem. That meant that he was in prisons with very violent people who were serving very long sentences, and often Muslims. And when you're in a prison with people who are on 20 to life, they've got nothing to lose by beating someone up. It's kind of a hopeless situation, so they're free. Once you start going down into the lower categories, though, things become a little bit... It's harder to find someone who will throw away the rest of their life by trying to murder someone in prison, okay? So, I understand the InfoWars. Look, I'm not a hater of Alex Jones and InfoWars. Sometimes they put out good stuff, but sometimes the level of hysteria and the Tommy's gonna die, he's all gonna die, the world's coming to an end. So, some of that, while it's useful and it does get the word out, it gets noticed, it does hurt credibility overall. And that was how I felt yesterday morning. So when I heard more credible information from people I know, who doesn't matter how I know, just calm down. Okay, look, the other thing is, to say that Theresa May sent him to this prison to be murdered by Muslims is a hell of a big statement to claim. Look, I think Theresa May has a personal grudge, but it's just my personal feeling looking at the history. Secondly, Theresa May is not the Home Secretary. She's not the Minister for Justice. Minister for Justice is what, David Gork or something? Don't even know. And people don't know. If anybody's responsible for the prisons, it's him. So it's not Javid and it's not even Theresa May. But to go and say that no, you don't. But unless you can show me the evidence, I'd love to see the evidence. I'm not saying it's not possible either. I really do think these people have personal vendettas. Tommy should not be in prison for 13 months for those 2 offences. Those offences were not real. They were trumped up. And so, but I was pretty certain that Tommy this time around would not be a Category B or Category A prisoner. And that turns out to be the case, because he hasn't had any hint of a violent offence or a conviction for a violent offence for a very long time now. He's a different, he did have violent offences on his record, but those are a long time ago, and there's no reason. He hasn't resisted arrest. He's gone meekly. When he was taken outside the court in Leeds, he was fully compliant. He pled guilty. That there's no reason to consider him to be a flight risk or a violent criminal, so he should not be on a Category B prison. Now, he may have been happy up in Hull, and I heard that it was okay up in Hull. And so if they've moved him because he was comfortable, then that sucks and that's shit. And I do honestly believe that could be the case. But again, these are my opinions and my feelings based on years of knowing him. And when he went to prison on the long stretch, a lot of people abandoned Tommy. People forget this. What happened was he did the thing with Quilliam just before he went inside, which I didn't even fully understand because I didn't have a long chat with him before he went away. But I did find out while he was inside what the deal with Quilliam was all about, and that made me understand it a bit better. Then when he came out and he told the story properly, and eventually that story wound up in his book, you start to understand that the Quilliam thing was mostly about securing his family. And so I understood that immediately. But there was not this huge outcry when he was in prison for that stretch. He was still the much hated, most hated man in Britain, you know, the ex-leader of the so-called far-right EDL, who were never far-right, that's for sure. So he comes out and he has built himself, and it has been built around him by his actions and his deeds, which have been good since he came out of prison, a reputation that means that now he goes inside prison, and that week it was on Tucker Carlson on Fox News, and Katie was talking to Tucker. Now, okay, she's also a little bit over the top. You know, that's her style. You know, he's going to die. It's a death sentence. It's not a death sentence. A death sentence is a death sentence. But there are things that the British government and authorities have to do to keep him safe inside. They have a duty of care. If you read his book, you'll hear he talks about a duty of care. And also, when I found out yesterday, what was told to me was exactly what he did on a number of occasions during his long prison sentence. He got to a prison, before even being admitted in, he would say, I want to sit down and I want to see the governor. If he can't see the governor, I want to write a letter to the governor. And in fact, even when he could see the governor, he wants to write a letter, because the letter then has to go into his prison file. It's on record to say, I am high risk. There is a risk that I will be attacked. If you put me in the general population, you will get trouble. You frame it that way. You frame it as two things. One, you have a duty of care to me. That's fine. But also, your prison will become unruly if you don't look after me. Or if you put me in a room with 4 Muslims who are serving 20 to 30 years to life for trying to murder the EDL, which happened to him. So, the point of that is to get put in segregation. Now, segregation is not the answer for a year and a month, because to put somebody in segregation for too long is a human rights offence, actually, and it's absolutely undeniable. Especially also on his first long prison sentence connected with the EDL was when he went to America on the passport offence, and he spent a lot of that time in solitary confinement, way more than anybody should, and enough time that the human rights watchers and Amnesty should have been paying attention to him, but of course they didn't. Anyway, I'm sure prison is no cakewalk for Tommy. It's absolutely no cakewalk ever. The prison he's gone to does have a big Muslim population, not 70%. There might be a wing with 70%. And if they're putting him on those kinds of wings, then I'll go so far as to say that that is a deliberate attempt to get him hurt. But again, it's a Category C, not a Category A prison. That does make a big difference. The last trouble he had in prison, which was when he was recalled because he'd been put out on license. They came up with something. This was all trying to stop him talking at the Oxford Union, basically, which eventually did happen. But he got put back inside for a few weeks, and that was when he got attacked by 2 lads. Well, he was going to be attacked, and he kind of went into them first. But again, that was a Category A prison where people were serving very, very long sentences for very violent attacks. There were Muslims in there who Tommy knew, who had murdered somebody he knew in his hometown. I mean, it's like he's not in that kind of a prison now, as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge. But the absolute truth is that outside pressure should be brought to bear, political pressure. Now, what was great about the big rally last weekend, a couple of weeks ago, you had Geert Wilders. He's the number 2 guy in Holland. He could be the Dutch Prime Minister if things line up slightly differently with their coalition systems. He can still be the Prime Minister. You also had Philip de Winter, who is a guy I have met through the counter-jihad. I met him first in 2007, and then I met him again on a trip when he came to Israel. and he leads the Vlaams Belang, which is a Flemish nationalist party. They've been going a long time. Now, they're always called far right and so on and so forth, but they're basically anti-unassimilating immigration. They're anti-invasion. As far as I know, up until that point where they were at the Tommy rally together, those two, Geert Wilders and Philip de Winter, would not generally share a stage together. So that was a change in energy. That was a shift, as Cernovich would say. That was a shift. And there's political pressure building in America. I know that Raheem Kassan is well connected out there. If he says he's trying to get people interested in America, he will do that. I mean, he's capable of doing that. He knows all the right people to get that done, and that's fantastic. That stuff is positive. I don't write off InfoWars and Alex Jones's huge audience. He's got a huge audience, and they love him. And oftentimes he's good. His interviews with Tommy are excellent. So I'm not mad. I'm not angry. I'm not upset. But it did, being hysterical yesterday on the day before, did allow the Daily, was it the Mirror, or one of the lefty papers in England, to write a sort of a sneery article about whether there are any prisons with 70% Muslim population in Britain. No, there aren't. The overall Muslim population is 15% of prisons, which is insane because they amount to 5% or 4% of the population, but they're 15% in the prisons. So they're vastly overrepresented in prisons. And then in some prisons, they are a much higher number. And they're also, I think, a much higher number in the more serious prisons, the category A's and B's. So Islam in British prisons is a huge problem, and Tommy is in serious danger from that. But we've got competing energies here. Let me give you a bit of Jewish stuff. Judaism says that the words that you put out into the world and the thoughts that you have even, which some people would call prayers, affect the world. So when you put out strong signals, and when you spread it to a lot of people who then put out strong signals saying that Tommy's going to die, this feels bad. Some of us are emotionally invested in Tommy staying alive. I mean, it's beyond a political cause. It's a heartfelt feeling that the guy is an amazing guy who loves his wife and kids and he should not die, and he should certainly not die now because of an unjust prison thing. I'll warn the affiliates, we're going long today, I don't care. So I also want to bring this, and you'll understand how this links up. I had an interesting Facebook conversation with someone, because last weekend was the Hezbollah march, the day after the Free Tommy thing. You have these Iranian, basically it's organised by Iran, it's paid for by Iran, this march through London, where people are allowed to wave the Hezbollah flag via some loophole that they say that there is a political wing of the Hezbollah, which is bullshit. Apparently by next year, hopefully, Hezbollah will be banned completely. Okay, good. But this year they weren't, and they marched. And various groups, I know some of the football lads took part, and separately the sort of main British Zionist organisations, who are a bit too wishy-washy to understand that anti-Islam groups and Tommy are good people, but anyway, whatever. I'm not going to heal that rift anytime soon. They tried to, and they succeeded in blocking the march and stopping it. And one of the things that blocked the march for quite some time was a chap called Mark Lewis, who's a barrister, excellent guy, very active in pro-Israel circles, which of course is a good thing in my book, because I'm a Zionist. Here I am, Brian of London, in my forest in Tel Aviv. And he blocked the march because he's in a wheelchair at the moment. He has multiple sclerosis, I think, but obviously fantastic mind. And he blocked the march, sat there in his wheelchair, and a whole bunch of gaggle of police around him. And he's a very eminent barrister, mixes in the best circles. Now, I just sort of, it was on a thread that somebody had started about Tommy, and he gave his a reasonable summation of what happened at the court Leeds. So I asked him a bit cheekily, because I saw he was on the thread, I said, Do you think Tommy would have been arrested if he had stood and blocked the Hezbollah march, and he said, in an instant? And even Mark says he was threatened with arrest 3 times, but eventually he dispersed of his own good. And he actually said perhaps he should have waited to be arrested, and I think he should have done. I mean, it's easy for me to say, but I don't think it would damage Mark Lewis's career to be arrested blocking a Hezbollah march in central London, but while in a wheelchair. I think it would have been tremendous. But here's the point. He was sitting in the middle of that road with the police, having a legal argument with the police over whether they should arrest him. And he had 3 clear warnings that he was about to be arrested, but he wasn't arrested. Tommy's just arrested. That is the very essence of the breakdown in the statue that stands on top of the High Courts in London. She is blindfolded and holding scales, and she is blindfolded because who you are and what you have done in the past shouldn't affect what is going on in a court now. And because neither of Tommy's convictions, first for taking photographs accidentally in the foyer of a court of his own face, first that conviction, which was not, it was for the Photography Act in court, 1925, that conviction was not held in front of a jury, it was not held, it was just a judge. And the judge was prejudiced because the judge took into account Tommy's history. Hey, hi Russia, well done on that amazing victory against Saudi Arabia. I liked watching that. The judge was prejudiced. He delivered justice based on his perceived knowledge of Tommy Robinson. And the second judge, even more so, he was prejudiced. That is prejudicial. Now, I don't know the ins and outs, and I don't want to know because I don't want to be at risk of saying them. Tommy has to fight his incarceration through the courts in England. That's complicated and tricky because the law is made that way. But the law has been seemingly constructed to F people like Tommy very, very hard, much harder. And you know, his whole history as a football hooligan, as soon as they say that, bang, prejudicial. Now, if he was having a trial in front of a jury and the trial was related to something technical like contempt of court, they wouldn't be able to tell the jury that he had been convicted of a mortgage fraud or convicted of football hooliganism in a long time ago, because it would be prejudicial to the jury. Yet that both the judges who have given him in ridiculously long sentences for contempt of court, both of them are basically saying that they were prejudiced in their rulings. And that's how he comes to be inside for 13 months and away from the streets and away from doing the work he was doing and revealing the kinds of things that need to be revealed in England. All right, we've gone long. I've got 80 minutes, but I've got one more thing to say because I'll wrap it back up to why he's inside. My coffee's got cold. Yesterday, I was listening somewhat half-heartedly to the LBCs and their ridiculous discussion about 4 Muslim men, again, convicted of child rape, I think Oxford. And they would, you know, again, it was just this same old stupid crap. Are they Kashmiri? Are they Pakistani? Should we say that they're Asian? Where are they from? What could possibly be the common feature? Oh my God. And nobody, of course, will mention ISIS, Boko Haram and the Quran. Nobody will mention those things. You can't mention those. Of course, not every paedophile in Britain is a Muslim. No. The majority of a different type of paedophilia is going to be white English guys because the majority of the country is white English guys. But this particular gang rape and pimping and the grooming part, which I've described before, which is the picking up of the girls and the enticing them, that bit is nearly always Muslims. Now, there are non-Muslims who join the gangs, and I was speaking last week behind the scenes with someone from one of the northern towns that's had one of these gangs. There's an ex-council worker, and what he said to me was the bit that hasn't come yet is to link up with what an organised business this had become, or has become, or is still, in terms of selling these poor, abused girls beyond the Muslims. Okay, so it's the Muslim gang that starts it, but then the girls get sold, literally sold, to any sick white punter who wants that kind of vile depravity that I can't even comprehend. None of this stuff is coming in the press. Tommy was doing amazingly valuable work, so that's why they wanted to silence him. I think that the backlash must come, the backlash in terms of publicity, talking about these issues, talking about getting Tommy out, somehow mounting a legal challenge and getting as much political backing. Now, you know, Europe's changing. Italy's changed. The Eastern Europeans, the Hungarians, the Czechs, Poles, they're going the right direction. There's been another rally called for July 14th. I don't know if July 14th is a great date because that's Bastille Day in France. That's not that the French Revolution was a sucky revolution, just really bad shit. But nevertheless, it's a good date. The July 14th, free the prisoners, because that's the symbolic day of the breaking down of the Bastille prison in France. So go to that. Hundreds of I hope hundreds of thousands of people turn up and go to that, because that does put pressure on them. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know. And I don't know how Britain gets beyond this. The political system in Britain is totally at odds. You know, UKIP, I think, were wiped out in the Lewisham East. Anne-Marie Waters probably got a few votes. But to start a national party and get anywhere, you know, it's like a 15, 20-year project in Britain because of the first-past-the-post system. And what's really scary then is that you in Britain have you've got no political outlet for resisting invasion. And you know, I love this quote. I think I might have been watching Bannon, or I read a Bannon interview, and this is the last thing, and I'll leave you with it. You know, most of the countries in Europe, Angela Merkel and Germany, and you know, the Conservatives and Labour before that, they haven't had an immigration policy for the last 20 or 30 years. What they've had is an invasion policy. They've been mismanaging an invasion. They have not been managing immigration. What Germany did there was allow an invasion. I mean, it was no different than having Russian tanks pour over the borders. Or the Allied forces move in from Normandy. They just did it without tanks and guns and bombs, but they did it nevertheless. They came with an alien philosophy, an alien value system, and Merkel opened the doors. And when she opened the doors in Germany, because of the damn Schengen thing, she opened the doors everywhere. And, you know, that's why you see Italy trying to shut the door now, and a lot of other places where the population has a viable voting alternative, they're going to take it. Britain, you don't. You absolutely don't. Labour and Conservatives are just the same as each other. Lib Dems are worse. UKIP doesn't want to embrace an anti-invasion policy. It doesn't want to confront... Gerard Batten does, but I don't see that he can really lead the party into becoming the kind of party that, say, Anne-Marie Waters is trying to build. It's just, the point is, UKIP might have strength and numbers on the ground, it just wasn't built around the oh God, the dentist again. I love that. It wasn't built along the grounds of resisting Islamization or allowing Muslims to lead a Muslim life, but not allowing Islam to affect everybody else's lives. That's what Tommy's bringing attention to. That's what you need to do in England. Sorry for the confusion yesterday. I don't like hysteria. Tommy is at risk. Tommy needs to be thought about and prayed for. By the way, if anybody wants his, I'm not going to say it on the Periscope, but contact me by direct message. If you're Jewish and you want to pray for Tommy, I can give you the full name that you'll need to pray for him properly, because Again, side note to everyone else, Jews need the proper name. That's why we don't say God in Hebrew. There's a very strong belief that if you name something properly, you have immense power with it. And so if you want to pray for someone, if you want to pray that someone gets well or stays safe, or all the other things that Jews generally do pray for, we do that by invoking the name of the person and his mother, and that's how we do it. Yeah, lots of Jews are atheists, but trust me, there's a hell of a lot of non-atheist Jews in Israel. A lot. And a growing number, actually. I think Israel is rediscovering a kind of modern orthodoxy, a positive Jewish value system and method of living and praying, and there's good things happening here. And we can see that in the fact that we have an optimistic society. And the reason you know Israel has an optimistic society is that across all strata of Jewish Israel, we're having a lot of babies. Even the secular parts, like I live in a secular neighborhood, three is the new 2. I mean, we're having 3 or more kids. And the religious are having 8 and 10 and 12. But then there's a sort of I've got a number of friends who are what I would call modern Orthodox. So they don't wear the black hats and the black cloaks, but they wear a little thing with tassels coming out of their shirt, and they wear a kippah, but they just dress normal like you and me. They work fantastic jobs, and they have 5, 6, 7 kids. I don't know how they manage that, but they do, and they're good people. And they switch their cell phones off at the weekends, which is something I should really be doing. And that's modern Orthodox Judaism. And I think it's very healthy. You know, they switch off the TV, they switch off the phones, their kids read books, they read books. It's a different lifestyle, and I tell you what, I won't knock it. I actually think that a lot of people could benefit, and that's what the Shabbat is. Now, you can take it to like real extremes and so forth about pre-tearing toilet paper and stuff, which some people do, but I think that the idea that we detox, get away from this thing, the social medias and all of that, for a day a week, probably a good idea. Wow, I've rabbited on a long time. Yeah, Islam is not similar, trust me. Islam is the inversion of Judaism. Every good idea that Judaism has, Islam takes and inverts. We're free. We're free to do good or to do bad. Islam is submission, and it's crushing you down. Judaism, the message is, here are a good series of things that you can do that will make your life better, things you can observe. But if you don't, you don't. And we don't really even have a concept of hell and so forth. It doesn't work the way the Christians then developed purgatory. And we certainly don't have anything like the Muslim version of hell and heaven. Woo! Anyway, it's going to be brutally hot tomorrow, 30 plus. I'm Brian of London. I'm in my forest in Tel Aviv. It's Bereshit Forest, which is the name of Genesis, the Genesis Forest. And I'm wishing you all a great weekend. I'm wishing and praying, actually, that Tommy is safe. I'm praying that he gets looked after, and that there are good people who... there are good people outside, certainly, who are very, very concerned for him. And... yeah, hopefully we'll get him back out soon. Thank you all. Shabbat Shalom. Bye.